Hi, Cortland. Um, I want to leave you some feedback on your draft. Since you sent it to me last night and said I hit a wall. The good thing is that I think that you have a fully realized arc. I can see a clear beginning, middle, and end. Um, there are some few suggestions I want to give you in terms of addressing that wall that you're talking about, and then a couple other things to help you improve the draft as well. As you can see, I highlighted some things on the draft because there's just a couple of things that I wanna talk to you about. So first off, I think one thing that's really going to help this essay is editing for clearer paragraphing. So let me just kind of like scan through your document. As you can see here, you've got really, really big paragraphs, right? This one is like an entire page. And big paragraphs aren't necessarily a bad thing. But the thing that you want to keep in mind with paragraphing is readers like information organized in cohesive chunks. So that means that whenever you switch ideas, you want to create a new paragraph. So this paragraph, for example, is one that I think would be better suited broken down into smaller paragraphs. So if you kind of look through the main themes, you're talking about what you feel, how you feel as a young African American male. Then you transition into providing some details about Longview. Then you transition to all these great details about your father. Then all these great details about your mother. And then the differences that you saw between yourself and your peer group, right? So these are all ideas that are related, but I think that they're going to read better if you broke this down into smaller paragraphs, right? Because those are really like four related ideas in terms of the draft, but not related in terms of individual paragraphs, okay? So one thing that I really think that will help your draft and help your ideas, I see something else that I want to tell you. That's why I'm going to highlight it real quick. I think it's going to read really well. So in short, like this paragraph in particular, there are all really good ideas here, but the organization and the progression of the ideas are getting a little bit confusing for the reader because so much is crammed into a single paragraph, right? You really want to think about breaking this down into smaller chunks. And the best way to think about that is where am I starting to change ideas here, and why would a good paragraph break be useful? So the things that I have highlighted, remember we talked about awkward sentences in class the last time that we were together. What I have highlighted are some examples of awkward sentences where, again, the ideas are excellent, but a little bit of tweaking will make how you're presenting the ideas that much stronger for the reader. So let's talk about some of these. So this one I think I talked to you about on your week 2 writing assignment as well. I can see what you're trying to say here, but it's not quite there yet. So you talked about, okay, I was going to use these sentence fragments as the hook. This one works great. This one works great. It's this sentence that's getting kind of clunky. So you say years of segregation, discrimination, and prejudice, and finally after the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Civil War, they thought it had been resolved. So where it gets kind of wonky in here is the indicates an object, but the way that you have this on the list, it sounds like MLK is the person, not like MLK as in the holiday or the monument, right? So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is the they in this sentence. The reader is not really sure who the they is, right? Because there's no subject here. So I think try something to the effect of years of segregation, discrimination, and prejudice, and to and then to resolve that, or to address that, something like that, the Civil War, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, I don't know, you're just going to have to you're going to have to tweak this a little bit, try to resolve, but I think, yeah, so maybe it's the idea of connecting these ideas all together more clearly, right? Does that make sense? Because this seems like a logical end to what you're trying to say here, but right now it's just kind of wonky. At this moment, you don't provide any background information on Longview, so we get that, what you're saying here is your grandparents are telling you these terrifying and horrible stories about violence, but the reader at this point doesn't know where Longview is. So I think do one of two things. Either don't mention Longview until it comes up later, or more clearly establish that the story is taking place in Longview and where Longview is, and it's in Texas, and this is the South, yet to So in short, this comes out of context for the reader. So the reader needs more context about where Longview is. Like, so for example, I think that there's a Longview, Colorado, right? So note that some readers are going to be lost. This is a good sentence. It's just that your subject is awkward. So you don't want to say me hearing these stories. Refer to yourself as I. So hearing these stories at a young age perhaps terrified me, or when I heard these stories as a young man, they terrified me. Does that make sense? Just don't begin sentences with me. You want to begin sentences with I, but I just kind of reorganize the ideas in this sentence for clarity. The Red Summer, I'm kind of on the fence about, because as an outsider, I don't know what the Red Summer is. However, through context, I can kind of figure out that this was probably a summer full of racial violence, perhaps during the civil rights era. So as a Midwesterner, right, I am very familiar with the riots that took place in Oklahoma in the early 20th centuries, where there was a very vibrant middle-class African-American community that was just destroyed out of prejudice and jealousy and hate. So those, although unfortunately not for a very long time, those stories were kept out of the history books, they're finally being told. But I think I have an awareness of those because I grew up as a Midwesterner, right? But as someone who's not a Southerner, right, this kind of comes out of context. So it might be useful, right, to provide a little bit more information there. These two are two more examples of awkward sentences where your ideas are fantastic, but you just need to do a little bit of tweaking. So you say here, so as a young, intelligent African-American male, I feel it was meant for me to push for a better future for African-Americans, So I hope that you can hear that this part of the sentence is excellent. Note, I didn't even highlight it. This part of the sentence is excellent. It gets clunky and awkward in here. So I think it's you have some unnecessary repetition and a really vague subject that's not necessary. So try something like this. I feel I was meant to push for a better future. Does that make sense? So do some tweaking right in here. So if you try something like I feel I was meant to push, you're gonna nail this sentence. It's gonna be strong. Here's another example of an awkward sentence that you need to fix because this is so good in terms of catching the details of place. So sorry, I'm rereading this to do some thinking, so forgive me for pausing for a moment. I think what you want to do here is actually turn this into a compound sentence. So I would try something like this. Texas is a strong Republican state that supports big businesses and generally high-income families. However, African-American families do not thrive in the place where I live. Does that make sense? So I think I think it's close to being there, but I think setting it up as a complex sentence, I think that you could make a better choice here. So I would try Texas is, but it does not typically support African American families. So do some tweaking there. This is another sentence that it's so exciting. And I love the way that you've set this up. And I think it can be so much stronger. So if you see or hear a train going across the tracks, I'm getting excited because I know what you're going to say here. I would make your mom the subject in this sentence, not the company. Because what this is really about, it's not about the company. This is about your mom, right? That's really what you're saying here. If you see or hear a train going across the tracks, my mom had something to do with it, right? So here's a real moment of pride for you as a writer, but it's also a clear moment of your identity, why you are the way that you are, right? You have so much, I keep coming back to the word pride, so much pride in your parents and the example that they gave for you. So if you look at what you did here, you said the company my mom is in charge of. It's just kind of clunky. Clean it up and let your mom be the subject there, not the company. The reader's going to know that. So again, let me try this up. So if you hear a train going across the tracks, my mom is in charge of the parts that go on that train, right? Just kind of, I don't know if that's the perfect choice there, but play around with this and allow your mom to be the subject. You're going to nail that sentence, and it's going to have a lot of poignancy, I think, for the reader and the story. Again, don't let me be the subject of your sentence. So play around with this. So I might say, my privilege upset my friends, or the fact that I had privilege upset my friends. Just play around with your subject there. This is an example of a sentence fragment, so it's not a fully realized sentence yet. So up here at the beginning, sorry if you're getting seasick that I'm scrolling through your draft, remember you were making conscious choices to break the rules here in order to bring the reader in. This is a moment where I don't think you want to break the rule. I think that you want to adhere to a complete sentence there. And same thing here, but this one is going to be a really easy fix. What I would do is just with a comma, connect this to your previous sentence. And I'll let you read how that sounds. Because I'll let you read how that sounds and see if you like that change. I think that that's the easiest way to fix this thing. Okay, there's a couple other things that I wanted to talk to you about, but I just wanted to talk to you about the awkward sentences. So do please take some time to play around with those and make them tighter and stronger. This section right here is what I really want to talk to you about. And I want you to, so remember I was talking to you in the beginning about your paragraphing. I want to point something out to you. You start with this idea, right? That I want to push for a better life because I recognize that prejudice exists, even if I didn't experience it on a personal level. But then you start talking about your parents, and then you really don't come back to this idea until all the way down here at the bottom of page 3. I want to offer you a suggestion here that I think is going to make this section stronger, because for me as your reader, this whole section is the strongest part of your essay. This is where I am really getting into the story, and as your reader, I really like you as a speaker, right? If that makes sense, because we're getting all of these like really great concrete factual details about your family, their place in Longview, and then you're juxtaposing those, like you're kind of coming to, like, what do I want to say here? it's kind of like a coming of age moment for you, right? Where you didn't realize the way that your other peer group saw you until they pointed it out to you. And that's like a real coming of age moment when we experience something and we assume that it's normal, and then we get to a point in our life where somebody shows us, not everybody lives that way, and we're like, oh my gosh, right? It happens to, I think, all young people. Even if it's not the specific context that you're talking about, but it is something that I think all young people experience. So here's my point. I think if you actually, because this sentence is so cool, and then this sentence is so clear, I think if you actually began this paragraph with Longview and then started talking about your father, I think break your mom into a separate paragraph, and then transition into this idea and bring these ideas down here, that's going to make the writing much tighter, okay? Because you introduce this idea and you walk away from it and present these other details, and you don't come back to it until all the way down here. The other thing about paragraphing is readers really appreciate like information all grouped together. And here's what you really did here. Here's an idea, here's a different idea, and then here's that idea again, right? That original idea is going to be much stronger if it's down here with the like ideas. So this is the section that I'd like to see you play around with. So you said I hit a wall. So let's talk about that. Two places where I think that you can expand. This fantastic relationship, where is it, that you had with your friend and his brother. If this is where you're kind of relying on summary, but I think that this is such a pivotal moment for you. If you are able to stretch this out into more concrete detail using description or quite possibly even dialogue, this section could be stronger. Here's something else that you said, I hit a wall. I like where you've taken this thing, and I like that you have said that, it's going to expand beyond the community. But I think a wonderful way to end this thing is make an homage to Longview, right? Take us back to Longview in this conclusion. So you've really painted a clear picture of how you see yourself as a leader in your near future, right? You are driven by something bigger than yourself, right? So come back to Longview here. So with all these details that you end us, how do you see those impacting Longview? How do you see yourself building on the legacy of your parents and the stories that your grandparents told you at the beginning, right? Does that make sense what I'm suggesting to you here? Come back to Longview and bring it to a close with you and your future self, and how you're going to build on that legacy, right? And it's not just about your family at this point, right? It's for the broader community. And I think that's gonna allow you to plow right through that wall. So yeah, that was my gut instinct when I read this thing. If he brought it back to Longview, this could be a wonderful way to have a clear arc and bring things to a close. So Cortland, I think as a whole, it's working. I like what you're doing here. Like I said, I would like to see you do some revision on those awkward sentences and do some thinking about paragraphing. I think if you do that, this is going to be a very strong narrative. All right, I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you're having a good weekend. And if you have any more questions or do some revision that you want me to take a look at, you can send me your draft again. But if not, I'll see you next week. All right, bye.